And we are live. And there's my camera on. I'm going to ask, Suzette Pluck's already here. There we are. So welcome to, I thought it was number 6, but it's number 5. We've got a few shout outs we're going to do tonight before we start. Thank you for those of you who've been supporting the production, written to us personally about the production, which many people have. Just to reiterate again that this was originally based on a screenplay that 13 Seconds in Kent State, that I wrote back, I think about 18 years ago now. It's been especially adapted for a live performance, like a live theatre production, effectively. So a few things have been updated, but it's set between 1970 and 1975. It's not set further in the present. And there's a lot of challenges, not only to doing a production like that online, but also rehearsing it and recruiting a cast willing to do it in a pretty short space of time, where most of them are completely unfamiliar with the material or the history, as you've probably been hearing on our interviews. Anything to add, Suzette?
No, it seems to be coming together very, very well. People are now we're further in, have a lot more knowledge, and that's showing in rehearsals, and people are researching, and we know a lot more about the actual subject, which is a good thing.
Yeah, and it's not that the information wasn't there before, but I think what people need to understand is all of our cast are doing this for gratis. This is a kind of, for want of a better word, it's a community project, really. There was a lot of us in lockdown who were feeling quite discombobulated, and you can only watch repeats of Sons of Anarchy so many times. I'm going to come back to that in a second. Myself and Dick and Tolson run a group of actors called The Outcasts, and we started reading scripts online. Some scripts that I'd written, some scripts that I hadn't, and I was digging out a lot of old scripts and writing new ones. And I wrote 30 scripts in 2020, of which the revised version of Kent State was one of those. In fact, our Outcast hoodies have the lists of all the scripts that we did in 2020 lockdown, and you can see there's a bit of a nod to Sons of Anarchy on here, because it says 2020 lockdown original, which is like the Redwood original, because I'm a big Sam Crow fan. So on that note, actually, I want to say a big hello to my Sam Crow fan guys online. I'm going to give a shout out to Cynthia and Angie, who are actually working on this production on our behalf, trying to do some press stuff for us in America. Big shout out to them. Thank you. Also want to give a big shout out to actor Kim Coates, who played Tig on Sons of Anarchy. He sent us a really lovely message to me personally on Twitter the other day, because he knows I'm a big fan of him and his work. And him and Theo Rossi run a fantastic, I guess you'd call it a webisode blog called Reaper Reviews, where they are going through all of the seasons of Sons of Anarchy, and they're talking about all the episodes one at a time and digesting them. And it's very interesting for us as creatives who both work in the industry but also love watching really good drama, to hear the little behind the scenes stories that went on with the actors and how much they knew about their storylines and their characters at the times when they were filming different episodes. And I can't wait to watch other episodes, watch the whole show again with the knowledge, but I'm going to wait until Reaper Reviews have done the whole thing, because I watch their Reaper Reviews pretty much. I think they're putting out about one a week. And your family are big fans of the show, aren't they, Suzette?
Yes, my sister-in-law Nicola loves Sons of Anarchy, and her son actually is playing Robbie Stamps in our.
That's right. And then there's a lot of our cast who are big fans of it too, including one in particular who's coming on tonight. So before we introduce you to our cast, and we thought we were going to have 3, but we've got 5. We've got 5 tonight, more than we advertised. So you're getting 5 for the price of 3. We're going to show you a clip from last week's episode of 13 Seconds in Kent State. Now, before I do that, I just need to make sure I've got all the sound settings appropriately correct, because I'm very good at messing this up. And we're going to show you a quick clip that features some of our actors that are going to be here this evening. This is just for the benefit of YouTube. We own complete copyright to all this material, and we're going to show you a quick clip of that now. So watch the clip, and then you'll get to meet our cast in a moment.
Can you show me in this where this horde of unrushing students is in this picture?
Objection. This photograph only shows a portion of the hill closest to Taylor Hall Terrace and can certainly not be used to verify the number of students on the hill.
Sustained. All right. This photograph has been entered into evidence. I'd like to show it to the jury.
Surely, Your Honor, the photograph speaks for itself.
Agreed. Mr. Connor, the jury will look at the picture at the appropriate time.
Well, isn't now that time, Your Honor?
Are you questioning my ruling, Mr. Connor?
No, Your Honor. Mr. Shafer, how long was there between you turning and seeing this man rushing towards you and you firing your weapon?
I fired just after the man on my right fired, so perhaps about 2 seconds.
All right, well, in this photograph, Mr. Lewis is standing still, Mr. Shafer. Can you explain that?
He was moving when I saw him, sir.
Well, moving or not, did you see anything in his hands?
Yeah, I did actually. One hand was upraised, giving me the finger.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Shafer. I can assure you that even us folk from back east in New York City know what giving someone the finger means. Did he do anything else with that hand?
No, not with that hand.
All right, so when he was doing this gesture, did Mr. Lewis's finger present a danger to your life?
Not that one, but his other hand was partially hidden behind him, so who's to say?
Well, did you see any weapons on him? A knife, perhaps?
No.
A gun?
No, sir.
Were there any weapons recovered from Mr. Lewis after you shot him?
I don't know, because I didn't wait around to search anyone.
No, you sure didn't.
Move along, Mr. Connor.
Already moving, Your Honor. Now, the FBI used this photograph to measure the exact distance between Mr. Lewis and the nearest member of the National Guard. Now, they worked it out to be 60 feet, which I think would be it would probably put it at the entrance to the men's room right outside this courtroom.
If you say so.
Well, as our good friend Mr. Brown said, the evidence speaks for itself. So he was 60 feet away, not rushing at you. What instruction did you ever get during your training as to when it is justified to take a human life with your firearm?
When fired upon, return fire, sir.
Well, was this person in whose direction you were pointing your weapon firing upon you when you fired?
No, sir.
Okay. I'm going to ask a member of my team to give you something. Now, if you take the M1 rifle from Mr. Bell.
Okay, we're going to hold that clip there.
You're about to fire your first shot on the hill.
And I'm gonna pause this video if I can.
Oh, you know.
Okay, so that was Michael Littman in action, who was a guest on our cast interviews on episode 1, going up against Sgt Lawrence Shafer, who was the first National Guard to take on the stand, and what a slippery character he was. So, Sue, shall we bring our cast in?
Yes, let them come in.
I'm going to let Suzette introduce you to them, and they're going to tell you who they are and what roles they're playing in the show.
Who's up first? Hello. Everybody.
Hello.
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 Oh.
Had my thing turned down.
What's a finger? Right. So to my, I can see Johnny Neal is here. So who are you playing in the production, Johnny? Tell us a little bit.
I am playing Robert Kellner.
And who is he?
Robert Kellner is the son of Joe Kellner, and he is one of the partners at Kellner and Kellner law firm. One of the lawyers taking on the civil suit case, representing Elaine Holstein.
Lovely. Thank you. And we have Ashley Tabatabai.
Oh,
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm playing Sgt Lawrence Shafer, who was one of the guardsmen on the day in Kent State and fired one of the protesters. I use air quotes there. And he was actually one of the people who actually came out and spoke publicly in the court trial about what he did, the only guard to do that, which is brave, challenging, all kinds of things, I'm sure, for him.
Yes, yeah. And we have Scott Barrington.
Hello.
Hello. And who are you playing in this production, Scott? I know you've got more than one character.
I'm playing 27 parts in this. It's a bit too much. No, 2 parts. I'm playing General Canterbury, who's one of the pick the word. One of the bad guys, let's say. Certainly on the wrong side of injustice, or the wrong side of justice on that day. And also I play one of the lawyers, who's an amalgamation of a couple of guys, but he's called Clyde Gautner in the play. He's a good guy.
Yeah, you complete opposites.
And he's, for anybody listening, that character is an amalgamation of Clyde Ellis and Mike Geltner, who worked for the ACLU. And in fact, both of those characters appear as themselves in the original screenplay, as do a lot of characters, but we had to combine a lot of characters because we only had so many actors. And as Scott said, he didn't really want to play 27 parts. Two was enough.
Online. Ooh. And last but not least, you have the lovely Anne. Where's she gone? And who are you playing?
Oh.
I'm playing Galen Keller, who's working as a paralegal on the case with Clyde over here and Robert Kellner over there.
In fact, last but not least, we have...
yes, last but not least. So it's 5, isn't it?
Yeah, we've got an extra.
Kenny O'Connor.
Kenny, who's attending a wedding shortly.
Yes,
So...
I'm getting married soon, and no, I'm not really. I just sort of dress for the occasion, you know. But yes,
very nice.
Putting us all to shame.
This is what I normally walk around, and I've got a pair of shorts underneath to keep it with the Zoom tradition. All right, but I'm Kenny O'Connor, yes, and I play Judge Young, J.D. Young, and he is the judge presiding over the civil court case of the event that happened on 4th of May, and he is well, it's good if everyone choosing to find out what he's like, as all judges are meant to be impartial. Well, that's for you to find out to see.
Yeah. He's as impartial as the judge was in the Chicago 7 film.
There you go.
Let's put it like that.
Fantastic.
So, guys, thanks for giving up yet more of your free time and coming on tonight to do this interview. Johnny's a bit of a late addition, fresh back from filming his deodorant commercial in Bulgaria. And we're really pleased to have you all on.
I swear, every time you mention it, it's something different.
It's a different country, I know.
At some point, it was a Marvel film. At another point, like
that's for the benefit of the cast to lift their spirits. But yeah, so Johnny actually did fly out to do a commercial during rehearsals and came back and made it back in time for the show. Yeah. And we're really grateful that he was able to do that. It's fantastic. So we're 2 episodes in, guys. You've all been in at least one of them. So it'd be great to sort of hear how everyone's feeling. What we've got about 6 questions for you. We're gonna we'd ask you to keep your answers as reasonably concise as you can, because we've got more of you than we thought. and I know that Scott's got to attend Kenny's wedding just at 8:20, so we'll be tight for time with a couple of our guests.
Yeah.
But Suzette, do you want to kick off with the first question then? And those people watching, if you have any questions for our cast, drop them in the chat. Questions rather than statements, please. But if there's any messages you want to pass on to them, please keep them polite and constructive. We will endeavour to do that also. So, Suze,
Yes.
I'll start her for 10.
Right. So the first question is what is your knowledge of Kent State prior to the production? And did you know about the civil trial that followed 5 years later?
So who's the oldest here? That's a difficult question. Let's put that to Kenny.
Oh yes, Kenny.
Okay, well, I'm 45. Right, I wasn't born around that time, but as a history buff, I'm quite ashamed that I don't know nothing about the Kent State event and or the civil trial, nothing like that. I mean, I follow a lot of British history and stuff like that, and I'm aware of when governments take their weapons on people. It's obviously it's the wrong thing to do, and that we're not aware of this that happened in America at that time. I mean, if it was a day, it would be all over the world and social media and everything else. You know what I mean? And it's amazing that something like this terrible that happened, and I never knew nothing about it, nothing at all.
Had you ever seen
it's hard to think what if there'd been mobile phones at Kent State, would the guard have even have fired? I'm not sure that they would, but let's answer that question further down. So Kenny, you would it be fair to say you weren't become aware of it before the production through maybe movies or documentaries, or only when you got involved in this production?
Only when I got involved in this production, it made me look at the history of it and Googled what happened and everything else. And even then, it's still quite, when you look at newspaper clippings, it's a little paragraphs or something, And when you find and look into it, it's like, I think the American state done very well to try and keep it as quiet as much as possible.
Certainly there were a lot of people that tried to play down what happened or blame certain quarters or demographics at the time. We'll perhaps touch back on that later.
But if you use guns on people, it's just it's just the wrong thing to do.
All right, so same question, Anne.
No, I knew nothing about it
at all. Nor the trial.
Did you know the photos? Had you ever seen
I didn't even know the photos. Embarrassingly, no.
So when you saw the Mary Vecchio photo for the first time, there wasn't like, oh, that seems familiar, I might have seen that before. You didn't even have that?
No, I hadn't seen it. So,
okay.
Really.
Interesting. Scott?
I'm still feeling happy that you thought Kenny was older than me, so that's good.
Yeah.
No, I've totally nothing. I hadn't heard of it, hadn't heard of the civil case. Almost feel ashamed to say that now, having obviously, been playing in the play and been reading up about it. So no, not a thing.
Any familiarity with the photos from perhaps like watching shows like The Wonder Years, or because I believe there's pictures of Kent State in the title sequence for that.
Really? No,
show, I believe so.
I remember watching that too. No, it's a big hole, I think, for me.
Okay, so Ashley?
I'd like to say that I knew all about it, but I'd be completely lying through my teeth. So no, I'm an 80s kid, no excuse there, but I think it's something that probably was outside of my sphere of awareness, just through age. And then looking back, even now, I'd even say, looking at the photos, nothing really rings a bell, which is crazy. Spending loads of time in the States, you'd think I'd absorbed that from the culture there. But I think, to Kenny's point earlier, it seems to be something that they've done a really good job of not speaking out about and suppressing. And as time's gone on, it's just been an ongoing pattern.
Which perhaps only underscores all the more reason why we wanted to do this show, and also felt it would be a useful narrative to parallel with a lot of things that are going on now.
Absolutely. And we talked about, gun violence there. Kenny mentioned that's been going on and on and on year after year in the States. So, that wasn't the first time in 1970, and it's been going on. And sadly, I don't know if it'll be the last time, but these kinds of things help bring it more and more to light.
Yeah. Johnny, who I know is a big Sons of Anarchy fan. And if you were watching before we started, I gave Kim Coates a shout out, who has been very supportive of our production in tweets and things, which has been very nice. So, Johnny, your knowledge of Kent State and the trial before taking...
Oh, yeah, I knew all about it. If you remember correctly, mate, I was the one that gave you the idea for it, actually.
You didn't even know me in 2002. Dream on. We hadn't even met then, just to clarify.
No, I think I was like 13 at that point. I had no knowledge outside of my own little bubble.
Yeah, it's quite weird to think you were 13 when I wrote the script. That is quite strange.
No, I had no idea, I'm afraid. I'm not so embarrassed to say it now that I know that everyone's in the same boat as me. But I think, just echoing the points of everyone else, that it's kind of a testament to how well governments, the media, and everything like that can suppress things like this, and especially at that sort of a time when there was so much of this kind of thing going on, and really the kind of the I guess the suppression of progressive voices has continued through the ages. And it's just kind of, as I say, it's a testament to sort of show actually how manipulative the media can be,
and still can be, of course. Okay, so we got some questions coming in, which I'll put to some of you in a second. Suzette, next question.
So we've answered, so you wouldn't have known about the civil trial. So I'm going to go on to how long have you been acting? Because we know your characters as well. What's your story?
So I guess a very brief, and I do mean brief, I don't want to have to do the interruption, you're talking too long. A brief overview of the work you've done prior to this. How you got, maybe when you got into acting, blah, blah, blah. So...
and why?
Well, let's not go why. That's like another 5-minute answer. We got 5 guests on today.
5 hours.
Because then everybody's going to start talking about Anna Scher, who we all love, but that's another 20 minutes. So, because several of us have been to Anna Scher's. That's a drama school, so we'll just give Anna and Charles Verrill a shout out, who Kenny and Anne both know. All right, so just give us a bit of an overview about how you got into acting, how long you've been acting, and so on. Kenny?
I've been acting for 9 years, right? And I did go Anna Scher, but I think my acting career kicked off when I met someone at Anna Scher. She come down, her name's Chloe Treend, and she's a professional actress and performer, and she took me one side after an acting class and she said to me, I'm doing a show in 2 weeks and I want you to be my compere. And I go, so I've never done it before. She goes, that's okay. I think you got it. And I went, do you want to do it? She goes, you want to do it? I went, all right, I'll do it. And then, so there's for me doing improvisation at Anna Scher's. 2 weeks later, I'm doing a show in front of a live audience, not a dead one, right? And it's the best learning that I've ever had in my entire life. Yeah. And
right in at the deep end.
Right, yeah. One of her quotes, she said to me, I threw you in the water and you had your armbands on, you were swimming around doing just fine. And I love her to bits, and she's been one of the most greatest people that I've met in my life, has helped me along the way. And that thrust into that, along with meeting Graham, who was a good friend of ours, who also was inspirational in my life with helping me with acting. He gave me the belief, and Chloe gave me the confidence, and I learned on the job. You know, I learnt on the job of doing stuff in front of people on stage and done I mean, when it's a comedy and done stand-up and stuff like that.
Wow.
Great. Okay. Thank you. I know you've done more than that, but thank you for that brief overview. Scott, in 120 seconds, away you go.
I've been professionally acting on and off for the past 30 years. On and off meaning every time I got to a certain level, nothing was happening. I had to go and get a mortgage or join the real world, pay a bill. Came out of it, used to come back into it. Only the last couple of years that I've really been managed to go self-employed and try and throw everything at it. And hopefully that will reap the benefits. But yeah, there you go, less than 120 seconds. Move on.
Scott and I did
thank
a
you very
Lenny
much.
Henry show. Scott and I did a Lenny Henry show together, and he had on flares. It's about 20 years ago now. And
Can you
I
go?
wasn't Lenny Henry.
Can you go onto Google and try and find a picture of you and Scott doing that show? Okay. All right.
No, I can't.
Johnny?
About 25 years. So started when I was 7 years old. My mum got sick of me dancing over the backs of the sofas and ruining her sofas when I was watching Disney films. So she sent me to an after-school thing where they had an agency. And I got to do some professional stage work, which kind of gave me an idea of actually what it's like to be a professional actor. Worked with Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart, so that was very cool. I had no idea who Ian McKellen was at the time until I saw him in X-Men. And then, carried on a little bit through my teens. Did a lot of voiceover work, some children's TV. And then, went to university, studied with the Impulse Company to learn Meisner technique, and came out into the industry. And I've done some films and theatre and bits like that. Trying to keep that brief. 25 years.
Lovely.
Ashley.
I always answer this with a really pretentious consciously or subconsciously, because I think subconsciously I've probably been doing it since forever. Consciously, about 20 years, since I was about 15, 16 in high school, doing drama and different projects there. Went off to uni, did more academics, did management, kind of left it for a while, and then really revisited it about 2002 and just really dove back into it then. Just been working on film and TV and doing a lot of my own stuff, making a lot of my own short films and really getting into the sort of writing and creator side as well.
And you also run a channel where you interview people in the industry.
I do. I've interviewed you, Lance.
You have interviewed me, which is how we met.
This all happened synchronistically
through a casting director whose name I can't remember now.
I can't because
it's gone, but it'll come to me.
Remember you, so I don't think we should.
It'll come to me. I can't remember her right now, but it will come to me.
Absolutely.
But no, I enjoyed that interview. Thank you very much. And I've watched many of them since. Just do a quick shout out. What's the name of the channel?
So very originally, it's the Ash Taba Show. So just basically my name.
Ash Taba Show.
Yeah.
So it's not about ladies who collect cats. It is actually about.
No, it is. It is about ladies who collect cats.
That's why
I'm really a lady that's met cat, loves cats.
Yeah, that's why you were there, Lance. Clearly.
I'm allergic to cats, actually, so I can't even be in the same room as them.
There you go. No, I talked to various people, but the majority, I'd say 80% are film and TV professionals, mostly casting directors in the US and the UK. Yeah. So for actors, especially ones starting out, or film students, it's a
lot of great stuff for actors on there. You've interviewed some really great casting directors, and they offer a real plethora of different advice. And
yeah, I agree. I've been lucky with that.
Listened to 5 or 6 of them now. Have it on when I'm working, and it's great. Fantastic. And we'll plug that again at the end, so people can maybe drop the link. I'll drop the link in for you. Last but by no means least, the most glamorous of all our guests. Couldn't make it tonight, but we have Anne, who has Anne Hayward, acting name.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess I feel like maybe Kenny, you said 9 years, but I feel like you've been acting for 10 years because I'm sure I met you about 10 years ago at Timber at like Carl's.
It was 9 years ago.
Oh, okay. So 9 years in London then. where I just started going to some improvisation classes, then started doing a few like comedy sketch things with a guy called Steve Whiteley, who is excellent, by the way, if anyone knows him.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
He's a comedian, he's really funny. Yeah, I was just doing that. Then I guess I like kind of got a bit more serious, and I went and did a post-grad year at drama school in 2018. So I finished that in 2019, and then so I was just kind of like entering the industry more properly at the end of 2019, 2020, and then it was lockdown. So here we are, and that's me.
Okay, thanks very much. Great to hear those stories. And Kenny and Anne are two of our Outcast regulars, and when our lockdown scripts really were taking off, we were doing the Diamonds in the Sky series, and actually I just need to credit both Anne and Kenny for their enthusiasm for those scripts, because it was their enthusiasm, along with a load of other actors from Timber, that I was going to start mentioning them, but I know I'll forget some, so perhaps I shouldn't, that spurred me on to keep writing those scripts. And within 5 weeks, I'd written all 10 episodes of this entire first season show. And
fantastic.
And now these guys are pressing me to write the second season, so we can all do read-throughs of that. Anne is constantly at me to. So the second book is now out, so I can write the second season because I have the template, because the novel's out. So hopefully the Outcasts will be doing some of those before the end of this year. We'll see. Before we go on to our next general question, we've got a couple from the audience. So I'm going to throw one of them to Ash, Kenny, and Scott, and I'm going to throw the other one to Anne and Johnny, who are kind of like the good guys and the bad guys team here tonight. Anne and Johnny are on the good guys side. So for Scott, Ashley, and Kenny first, this is a great question. How does it feel trying to play a character that your own principles disagree with? I guess the moral dichotomy of playing somebody whose moral compass is so far removed from your own. How does that sit with you, and maybe how do you tackle that? And I think we can bleed that question into the research that you did for your parts in order to find the truth of your characters as well, perhaps. Scott,
I love that they're assuming we've got no fascists on the cast.
Well, we'll find out. That could make us an internet sensation for all the wrong reasons, but I'm pretty sure we don't have any, but let's see. So Scott, Johnny just desperately trying to get us in trouble with all the forums online. Thanks, Johnny. Scott, so if you'd like to answer that one first, and I'm going to put you on speaker view for this. There you go.
Well, we're talking about fascism. Donald Trump was robbed. Let's start there. No, I'm joking. I am joking. Seriously joking.
Sorry, right. Scott had to leave us, everyone. So
we wanted some notice on the internet. They could start it. No, it's an actor's dream to play somebody completely far removed from who you are. So hopefully I'm not a complete fascist. So to play someone, General Canterbury, it seems very much lied on what happened on that day to save his own skin, save the army, save what he fought for his entire life. And so he is someone that has sold out. And it's good to play these people because it just opens it up. What would you do if you was in that position? So, and connecting that to, you were saying about researching for the role. To be honest, I've listened to a tape, I've heard his voice. If the play was called General Canterbury, then I've done a lot of research about him. But the part he serves is to show the aggressive injustice that went on. Lawrence wrote the play, so it shows this guy as what he is and what he didn't do to help matters on that day. And so I sort of see him as a cipher for the injustice of what happened. And I would rather play him not as an out and out baddie. You know, if I had more time, I could show different shades of the guy, but it's more about the fact that he did wrong. He's very much in the wrong. And the more I play him as a complete bastard in that sense, the conversation may continue after this is over. The injustice of what happened might spark in people that haven't, read about it or learned about it. So yeah.
Great answer. And just within your time limit there, Kenny, you have to play quite a challenging character with Judge Young, quite far removed from your own moral compass, because Kenny and I are pretty close friends, so I can vouch for the fact, having been to a rave in his garden. So Kenny, talk about the dichotomy of playing. He's a pretty horrible man, and you've played quite a lot of horrible characters on our productions, and also the research you did for Judge Young.
Well, look, for me, acting is playing different people, and I'm obsessed with human behaviour, and why people do what they do. And I looked at Judge Young, and I looked at your script, and I looked at his language, and I can sense from his tone and where he's coming from, but also is Judge Young believes he is impartial. Judge Young believes that he is right. And I played Jack the Ripper, who, when he murdered people, I believed I was doing the right thing. And so it's you put yourself into the mindset of that person. And so there's an interesting line in the script where he says, I believe that the truth is not coming out in this case. And it's the connection between Joseph Kellner and Judge Young, when they both think that the truth is not coming out. So that line told me he believes that he is right. And so I play it that I'm right. That I am putting the truth out there, right? And so I think, I've never met Judge Young. I've never talked to him. I can't go into his mind. I can't read his mind, but I can look at the script and work out from there that he thinks is right. I'm going to play it as if I feel I am right, and then I take. It's like I've done NLP before. The third person, you take yourself out and put yourself over there. It's like a schizophrenic thing. You know what I mean? You go, Kenny's over there. You go and have a rest and watch Arsenal or something, because that's what he does. And then I become Judge Young, and that's why I dress up a lot, because I think I have to get into a character to make myself. I find it difficult to rehearse if I haven't got the gear on.
No, I think I like that about you, Kenny. I've always whenever we do a table read, we always know Kenny's coming in a costume, but it lifts it when we're doing table reads online, and that's how this all started. It was like table reads online, and it was like, how can we make them more interesting? And you were at the forefront of how can we make them more interesting always.
Well, I think I've got more costumes in my wardrobe than normal clothes.
Which is a conversation for another time. Ashley, your approach to Sgt Shafer and research for the role.
Yeah, for me, I personally don't see it as playing a character. I see it as embodying a human with whatever you're doing, and especially in this case when these were real people. I think with the case of Sgt Shafer, there wasn't a whole gamut of stuff available online about him. There were some articles about some of the depositions in the court case, which a lot of that I obviously saw was overlapped in the writing. And so for me, the script was the key starting point. And I see him very much as someone who's torn between doing what he thinks he's supposed to do and has been told to do in his job as a guardsman, and clearly having some kind of moral dichotomy over wanting to come out and vocalize what's happened, but feeling unsure about how to do that. And I think many people can relate to that about someone who hasn't really owned their own sense of self enough and is trying to, they're being pulled in different directions. And that was the core of him for me.
Because his character, there are two guardsmen who are kind of separate from the rest. And on one end of the spectrum, you have Schaefer, who admitted to admitted to shooting and wounding one of the students, Joe Lewis Jr., who may be watching today. And if he is, hi, Joe, because he just sent me a message about half an hour ago. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got Michael Delaney, who is a witness firmly with the plaintiffs and who's left the National Guard and is very ashamed about what happened. Whereas Shafer doesn't really seem to have regrets about shooting somebody, or he's not very apologetic about it. But because he admitted it and because he's been vocal about it, he's been a bit ostracized from the rest of the Guard because they don't want him. They didn't want him to admit it because they don't. I think the higher echelons didn't want to admit any culpability at all, and he's kind of messed that up for them a bit.
And his excuse was that he felt like he was under threat. He felt that his life was in danger because he couldn't see, someone had their hand behind their back, and he thought he had to, do some rounds into the air first, and then things escalated. And
of course, we saw a clip with you earlier giving evidence, which is one of my favourite scenes. Thanks, guys, for asking that question. I'm going to put a slightly different question to Johnny and Anne now. You're both playing real people, and sort of a bit of a two-parter question. One is, how did you find doing the American accent? And secondly, did you look towards any? Were you inspired by any other acting icons who played similar roles? Obviously, a lot of the greats have played lawyers and done big courtroom scenes. Al Pacino, Gene Hackman, to name two of my own favourites. Did either of you look to iconic characters similar to your own that have been portrayed in other movies by somebody else, where you couldn't draw on the figure themselves because they were more elusive? I know that Galen Keller is a more elusive character for Anne, so maybe Anne, will start with you on that one. How was the accent, first of all?
Well, I don't know how to answer that. It's
I think yours is pretty strong.
Yes.
I've been very happy with it on the production.
I recognise it's not perfect by any means, but trying to do my best there. So
as are we all.
Yeah. And
that'll be my defence next week.
Got to thank Paul Brennan as well for giving me some tips.
Well, we've all had those of us that needed it, have all had coaching sessions, which has been very, very helpful. And if we'd been doing this production full on and it had been a big paid thing on stage, we probably would have had 3 or 4 weeks of dialect coaching sessions as opposed to 3 or 4 hours. So,
I mean, I also do love that, the Accent Dialect Archive website, I think it's called, where you can go and find
very helpful.
Yes,
speeches by like various people around the world in different accents, and I've been listening to that over and over and over. So,
tell us a bit more about the character of Galen Keller and sort of how you've tried to find the truth for her, because she's a very interesting character.
Yeah, so like you said, she's not necessarily kind of the face of the case by any means, because she's working away in the background, so there's not necessarily much that I could find out about her as much as the other people online, but people do talk about her in other things. Like I know you've got Joe Kellner's book Lance, which where he mentions about how which actually I know you've included that scene in the script in episode 1 where he comes onto the case and there's so much documentation, it's a little bit overwhelming, but Galen and Stephen are there like we know everything inside out. And that conversation between him and her that happened where he asked her random about what did Captain Syrup do on the hill, and she is able to pull out a file immediately of like, this has this, all the documents in. Yeah. So, and I also read that he was saying that Joe Kellner was saying that he liked to have Galen sort of next to him throughout the trials because he could rely on her to have a broad knowledge.
Pull out the relevant documents and things.
And I also read somewhere that she had summarized, indexed, and cross-referenced over 13,000 pages of trial transcript, and things like that. So I feel like you can get a sense of definitely how she was like professionally.
Yeah, very professionally astute and precise, and a mind of information on the case, clearly.
Yeah.
And she tragically passed away quite young. Do we know how old she was when she passed away?
No.
I think it was in the 90s. I think the early 90s. I think.
But I'm saying she did all that, and she had children as well as
3 children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think let's not spoil for those people that are watching the show for the first time. I don't want to reveal too much about what happened with her and other people. But Johnny, what about you? Robert Kellner, quite a big character, assisting his father with the case, and he was very involved from day one.
Yeah.
You're probably a bit younger than him
I was going to say, like,
real life.
I think you wrote the character slightly younger, or maybe it's just me interpreting it younger because I'm playing it. But for me, like, there's a kind of like youthful anger that he has. But I find with any character, it kind of runs through your own filtration system. I like what Ashley said, where it's, you're kind of you're just playing another human being, and all human beings have the same capacity for emotions. And so it kind of runs a character through your own personal filter and see how that comes out, as it were. And for me, it comes out with like, there's this kind of youthful anger about him. And he reminds me ever so slightly, and it's not something I've kind of like tried to emulate in my performance, but he reminds me slightly of Tom Cruise's character in A Few Good Men. Just because there is that kind of like passion and kind of like anger, and this kind of like every turn he's trying to take, there's something stopping him, and he's not kind of thinking it through as fully as his dad is.
You also can't handle the truth, can you?
I can't handle the truth. No.
And you also like to do a really fast run down a street between.
Yeah, there will be one episode where I've got my iPad, I'm just sprinting down the street,
running everywhere, and then you get on a bike as well, a really nice bike, and
of course, and then I crash it because I have no idea how to ride a bike. It's that would be it for me. As for the American accent, I was fortunate enough that I've cottoned on to an American accent quite easily anyway. I think just because I imbibe so much American TV. But I was fortunate enough that in the early 2020, I went out to Armenia to shoot an American series where for about 2 months straight, I was just doing an American accent. And because it was American director, American producer, there were American actors involved. Like if I'd slipped up, they'd have picked me up on it.
And you were filming that right when the pandemic was happening, because I remember you calling me and saying, "Shall I quit the show? I don't know what to do." And I was like, it was the real early days, and my friend had just called me from Dubai to say it was all going into lockdown there, but they were self-containing the unit and they were going to sit it out, and they did. They sat it out. I think they were in Jordan, and they shot the whole thing, and then all came back at the end. And so there was me saying to Johnny, perhaps, if they're all going to button up, maybe you should sit it out. The things hadn't gone quite so mad. This was probably around January, I think, wasn't it? January going into...
Well, it was February time, I think we started. And then it was just like there was whispers of it going on, but no one was kind of like, no, it wasn't really a thing when we started it. And then as we kind of got to the 5-week mark, that was when all the toilet paper was running out in the UK. And it was just starting to reach Armenia. Like, as we were there, people were starting to wear gloves and starting to wear masks. And whereas we were watching like BBC News, and we were like, what the hell is happening back home? Like, no one's on the streets. There's nothing in the shops. Like, what is going on? And I was calling you. I was frantically like calling my brother and my mom, just going like, what's going on? Should I come home? And yeah, like it was just, I think about a week later, like Russia had closed its borders, and America was closing its borders. Just literally in the nick of time. Yeah, we got out. So yeah, that was very interesting because we were watching it kind of, it was weird. It was like a weird out of body experience.
Good story for the biography. That one. What's our next question, Suze?
So our next question is, what's your biggest challenge performing online?
I can read Johnny's mind, the option wheel that's going through his head. Because me and him have done a performance online before. In fact, I need to give him, there are only 2 people on this production who've ever directed me in anything. And one of them is Dickon, who co-founded the Outcasts. And the other one is Johnny, who directed me in an online show called Humanity, because he told me he was doing it. And I said, oh, if you've got a little part, I wouldn't mind doing something on it. And he said, actually, I have. I've got, you're old enough to play an old married geezer now. And I thought, oh, fucking great. And yeah, and actually it was a lovely role. And I really enjoyed working on that.
You did
direction well, Johnny.
He did. He was fantastic. He wasn't like, I was a little nervous because I was like, I know directing's his thing, and like I hope he doesn't feel like I'm stepping on his toes if I offer him direction. But no, he was great. He stepped straight into the role of actor and let me do my thing and let me do my thing the way I do it.
I take my director's hat off. He had me running up and down on the spot in the office to warm up, and do you know what? It worked. It was good. It was good for the scene. I wouldn't necessarily do it for every role, but for that scene, it actually, for what we needed, it actually worked really well. So, so the biggest challenges of acting online. Johnny, you want to take that one as we're already talking to you?
Oh, go on then.
Maybe with this production, you can talk about this production in particular, but also generally. I mean, and this is a very complex online production. We're really pushing the envelope. At least I feel we are. We're trying.
Yeah, I mean, I feel for me personally, this production is slightly easier than the one we were doing before, just because on that one I was not only having to act, but I was also having to look out for any like technical glitches that would impede the edit. So for me, this is like, yay, I'm really happy I'm not having to look out for that. I can just get on with my job, like the thing that I like, the acting. But in terms of actual kind of like acting technique, I think the main, in any medium, you're always adapting to that medium. If you're on stage, you're adapting to the idea that you have to project and have to accept the audience and their listening capabilities as a given circumstance. If you're working on film, you have to accept the camera as a given circumstance and accept that you can't just walk out of shot, and work that into your process somehow. And it's the same with this. I think it's just a different medium where you have to accept it as a given circumstance and work with what you've got, which is essentially just to be communicating with other human beings over an online call, which it has its own impedances, but those impedances can, that's not a word, can lead to
works well.
Impediments. Thank you.
It was going so well, Johnny. You nearly got there.
I know. Those impediments can work to your advantage and add other flavors to the performance that might not necessarily be captured on film or in theatre, because you have access to the other actors and can interact with them directly. You know, if you want to shake someone by the shoulders, you can't do it. So you have to find out some other way of expressing that, whether it's vocally or whatever, you know.
I just do this towards the camera and then I get Suzette to move up and down a little because I'm doing that.
Stop it.
Nice.
We're doing all sorts of tricks. Scott, how are you finding it? Is it your first online?
Yeah, I was just thinking, how would a fight scene work? That'd be quite interesting. Coming from
break the computer.
Yeah. No, I tell you what, the main thing that stuck in my mind, you just asked Johnny that question, and to me, it's not about the performances at the very end, when we do a rehearsal, we've done a show, we go offline and we're all still online, and you give us our notes and we all say great and we applaud each other, and then we just turn off the screen and we're alone. You know, normally you'd go over the pub after a performance, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I really miss going over the pub. For sure.
And that's the thing. That's the thing that's just kind of lonely at the end. You turn off and you're like, oh, and you go back indoors. And you're like, because I do this at a shed. I'm in a shed at the end of my garden, so I go back indoors and I'm like, okay.
I was thinking about that for the last night, which is going to be on May 4th. And Kenny doesn't know it yet, but he's already agreed to come round and have a bottle of wine with me afterwards to celebrate. So now that we can mix households again. So
I'm up for that. I'm always up for that.
Yeah.
As long as you two are okay, then that's fine, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, what we're going to do is we're going to try and bubble cast up geographically. Excuse me.
There's no one near me.
Put people together.
There's a reason for that, Suzette.
Oh, later.
No, yeah. So the being discombobulated in the going offline experience, and that there is always a come down after doing a show as well.
Yeah.
And I get exactly what you're talking about. Ashley, how are you finding it?
Yeah, I mean, I think to Johnny's point, it's more that it's different considerations as opposed to maybe challenges. That it's still a new thing to all of us. So it's more technical things. It's small movements and knowing how that's going to resonate with the person who's going to be watching, and just try to understand what's the audience going to be seeing. That, and also eye lines. You know, we're looking at a small box, and if it was a self-tape or to screen on a camera, I'd look this way or that way, and it's too big of a movement on Zoom. So it's just calibrations, I think, on technical stuff to just remind yourself of, no, just this does so much.
Yeah.
Michael Caine needs to release.
I keep saying to people, you can come into camera slightly, and the actors are always laughing at me saying, doing this, and I'm like, no, literally just move an inch.
Yeah.
And that'll just give that word emphasis, and because you've got this little space you've got to play with, and you need to. Acting online is a different medium. I said this from day one. It's not theatre, it's not film, it's not TV. It is a different medium that incorporates some elements of all of those techniques. And then there's a lot of others you have to throw out the window. It definitely is a different rule book. And then we're trying to do different things by sharing screens and dropping in images and stuff like that to take people. Prop passing. Like when Suzette and I will now. Have you got your phone there, Suzette? Should I demonstrate?
I do.
So when I just like drop past the phone to Suzette there, and then there you go. Look at that. Amazing. The wonders, magic of television.
It moves.
And the Oscar goes too.
Yeah. If you download the software for that, you can incorporate that special effect onto your shows. So yeah, it is tricky. Kenny and Anne, you both did the last production. Obviously, that was our virgin sort of online experience for most of us, and we learnt a lot when we were doing that. How are you finding this one compares to that, and how are the challenges this time around that maybe weren't there before, or vice versa? Anne?
Well, we use a lot more backgrounds in this one, I suppose, so that's just something to remember, but I don't actually mind that. I don't think there's much difference for me in terms of like the last one to this one, like how it is. Like my biggest thing is it not being able to like look directly at the person sometimes, because they've appeared over here on my screen, and even though I've got it on speaker, like just having like view, like I miss being able to look directly at someone. But also one of my biggest things is just trying to turn the camera off without having my mouse like hovered over the stop camera button, so that I don't need to go look down.
Yeah. There's been a lot of, particularly with this production, there's been a lot of finessing of how to make transitions from one scene smooth to the next. That's a big thing. And I mean, sight lines that Ashley was talking about, we were just yesterday doing a scene where 4 people are sit around a table, and there's a waitress, and we had to draw a floor plan and work out who was where so that all the sight lines were correct in relation to the characters they were talking to, even if on the Brady Bunch screen that we're on, they're not necessarily quite right, but they will be right in terms of who is sitting where. So we had to get all of that correct, which was, you know, the amount of work that's going into some of the stuff, including in the court. We've added a new element in the court this week where the guardsmen stay in the court and they watch the other guardsmen. Mm-hmm. So now you don't just have the plaintiffs in the court, you've got the guardsmen in those scenes as well, laughing at Charlie Brown's jokes and kind of trying to intimidate the people on the other side. So we added a new dimension to it in rehearsals just yesterday, and that's actually working really well. So that's going to be something interesting that's going to be different about episode 3. Kenny, how's this one for you?
I think for me, right, basically, is performing like this is something to be grateful for, but also something to remind you of what we miss and what we do and what we love by being on stage or being in front of in a studio on a camera or stuff like that. You know, I want to get back there, but because this all happened with me and all of us over the pandemic. I've never been on Zoom before the pandemic. I've never done a Zoom call. I mean, I think the first read-through we done, Lance, was on Skype, and it was like we couldn't hear each other and stuff like that. And
well,
like,
we could all hear each other, but we just couldn't hear you. I do remember that. You sounded like you were in a box, a man in a box.
Yeah, but you know, it was like, okay, well, we can do something like this. It's a new format, okay. And then for me, then I was like, what's this? I've got to touch a mic and a camera. I've got to take this incorporation in what I'm doing as an actor, you know, and then you're trying to occupy this space and make it something. Hello.
Oh, his camera's gone.
Bye-bye.
So Kenny's time was up, clearly.
That's what happens when you badmouth Skype.
I'm back.
Oh, no.
There you go. Technical,
yeah.
and so it's dealing with that, yeah. And then I think they've done a really good job over the last year, Lance, with the direction of yourself and Dickon of working with that. It can work, and I think it does work.
Yeah, we're hoping to have Dickon Tolson, aka the helicopter, on one of these interviews at some point. But he's done. Me and him have co-directed a show together on stage. That was the first thing the Outcasts ever did, and I'm sure we'll do more. He's been an assistant director on this one because he didn't have quite as much time. And this production's been massive. I mean, it's even bigger than Persecution in terms of the elements, technical elements, and different things that we're putting into it. It's far more complex and also far more not more important to get right, but as important, because the last one we did was a true story as well. As important with any true story material, you've got to get it right. You know, you've got to get it as right as you can. And I know that not all of our actors look or quite sound like the people they represent. Some of them are slightly younger, a bit more dashing. I don't suppose that the real counterparts would mind that too much. But we're just trying to capture the truth of what they said and what they did and how they acted. I think that's probably the most important thing to get right.
It moved a lot of people who were actually there. They've been moved by it, and it's brought back a lot of memories. So we must be doing something right. It's triggered real memories, and they can watch it chronologically as it happened. And that's in.
We're telling the court case more or less chronologically. I think there's one witness who's slightly not in the order that they actually came, but for the most part, that's the case.
You've got a real difficult balance there in writing it, Lance. In my opinion, is that, you know, obviously it's a hell of a lot of exposition you've got to get across because you're telling the actual court case. But in that, you know, the actors have to find in the characters some feeling and some depth and bring those people across as real people, not just reading out what they said in court. And that's where it works, of course, where you meet the families outside of the court.
Yeah, I mean, the original script was really, I mean, the lead character was Joseph Kellner, and then the people around his team around him, and then the plaintiffs were kind of the supporting cast, and I guess you'd call all the witnesses were like the cameo guest cast. But now that when I wrote the feature film, I always thought this should be a TV series, and as I was writing the movie back in the early 2000s, television hadn't taken off to the degree it had. You had HBO, but you didn't have the digital, all the stuff you got now, you know. And there was no Netflix. Now, of course, as soon as we decided we were going to adapt it, the first thing I did was rewrite it as a miniseries. So I did that first, and then the next thing I thought was, well, we can't just have factual narrators in this. The narrators have to be real people. Who can they be? And the obvious choice was the four voices that were missing from the piece, which was the four kids who were dead. And I might be blowing my own trumpet here, but I think that's the best decision I made and could have made with the script. And I absolutely love the way that's bringing the core of who they were closer to the audience. And we're focusing on who they were as kind of as students, as the people they wanted to do when they went to the movies and went on dates. And yeah, you know, two of them had an interest in the Vietnam War and peace protests, but I'm not focusing on that side of them because that's the job of the defense to focus on that stuff. And I didn't want to focus on that. I wanted to get to the real humanity of who they were. So I looked for all the personal tidbits about them that I could find, Valentine's cards, personal letters, this, that, and all of that stuff is what went in their portrayals. And the four actors that we got playing them, we got very lucky of you know, we're extremely lucky with all the cast, really. Yeah. Everybody's really bringing their A game. You know, some of us are more rusty with our accents than others. We're not all as good as Johnny, but you know, but I think everybody is doing all right.
It's getting stronger, don't you worry.
Yeah. So we've just had a message from someone saying, since I'm not in episode 3, I think this might be a cast member. This is piquing my interest. I'm glad they're going to watch it. That's very supportive. Thank you. What's our next question, Suzette? We've got time for a couple more.
Do you know what? We've actually run out, Lance.
We haven't done 6. I don't think we've done.
They've all been amalgamated and come together. So bye-bye.
Okay. Well, then we kind of got a couple of last things, and I'll pick out the ones that we've got online here. So, I mean, let me put this one to everybody. What has been a difficult year, 2020, going into 2021? We all said, well, it can't be any worse. It's still a very difficult year. I personally had an horrendous 2019, which was still worse than either of these two. So what has getting involved in this production, finding out about the story, learning about what happened, learning about this very important flashpoint nugget of history, American history predominantly, but which has issues which I think resonate throughout the democracy narrative throughout the entire world. What has that meant to you? And maybe if there's anything you want to say to those who were there, include it in your answer. Johnny. Johnny, I know you haven't had time to prepare this one, but do your best.
And go.
I think the main thing that this show and shows of its ilk do is to, I guess, they highlight the flaws within humanity that are present, unfortunately, within a democratic society, which unfortunately the biases that humans have automatically render a democratic society difficult to maintain, because the minute you put a person in charge of other people, that person's biases, their wants, their needs automatically come before everyone else's. You know, George Orwell said it the best. You know, some animals are more equal than others, and a show like this highlights those biases and those difficulties that you have within democratic society, and it makes me want us as a race and a species to persevere towards what I think could potentially be, you know, a more fair and equal system. It's going to be difficult to achieve, but I think, you know, given time, given resolve, given time to meditate on the mistakes of the past rather than committing them all over again, we can get there. And I think the other thing is actually seeing the human side behind issues as well, because it's all very well, you know, seeing the news, you know, reading about it, something, but when you see something dramatized, when you see the people behind those issues, it makes you actually empathize with them and realize, oh, actually these aren't just issues, these are people going through something, and maybe I should, you know, stand up and listen.
That's great. That's a good one. Off the cuff, what we like to hear. Ashley, you're smiling away. I can tell you're keen to talk a little bit.
Am I about to be noosed? No, look, I think we spoke earlier and it was pretty clear that none of us knew about this before we came onto this project, which is telling. I've made stuff of my own about stuff where there's been scandals in different countries, namely in Spain, and no one knew about that either. And I think it highlights the fact that there are so many things that have happened and are probably happening right now in the world that we don't know about. And these are just two examples. This is one example, and what I've done is another one. How many more stories like this are there that we don't know about? And so I think the important thing is that as storytellers, as actors, as filmmakers, we're blessed and also have a responsibility, I think, to be able to learn about them. And then if we feel so inclined, shine a bit of a light on that. Because not only does it shine a light on the specific event, but also on other similar ones, so that people who are out there that have gone through it or think that they can relate to it feel and be understood. And I think that's our job as actors and storytellers. And that for me is you know, why this as a piece in of itself is so important.
Great, good answer. And case in point, until I saw the movie JFK, which I've said it before and I'll say it again, inspired me to write this script. My interest in American politics was not either as astute or as perceptive and clear as it is now. And I also didn't have the full knowledge of the circumstances leading up to and what happened after the assassination of Kennedy. So that film made me turn over some rocks and do a lot of study into that subject. And that proof of the pudding is in the eating. I think, you know, this is a small online production. It may have a further life, and we certainly hope so. It would be awesome to get it made as a miniseries. It would be awesome to put it on stage in Kent, which is being talked about. But regardless of whether those things happen or not, even if only 10 people watch it online, and we know it's a lot more than that, but 10 people who didn't know about Kent before, and those 10 people buy Howard's book, which is sitting on the shelf behind me, or go and read others, or do their own digging, that's 10 people that have educated themselves to some degree. They're going to make up their own minds about what they thought happened, but that's still cause and effect. That's still a job well done, I think. Anne, your thoughts?
I'm trying to remember the original question, but
what has being involved in this production, having known nothing about it before, meant for you? And if you have a message for any of the people who were there that day, what would it be?
Okay, well, like, yeah, within the context of the fact that, like, we've got together originally, like, the Outcasts last year because of lockdown. Yeah.
The Outcast was formed in the summer of 2019, just to be clear on that.
True, yes.
We started doing our classes online, is what you meant, because of lockdown.
Yes, what I meant is we started reading all of the scripts you've ever written, one after the other.
That's a lot of scripts.
All of them.
So that, for me, has been excellent, just especially with this production, because we rehearse a lot and there's a lot of episodes, and getting to, throughout lockdown, meet loads of people who I've, you know, just have interaction with other people. God, but you know, like, it's been hard.
Yeah, having the social contact and camaraderie, even online, has been a blessing, I think, is where you're going.
Thank you for putting that into actual sentences for me.
It's what I do.
That's what I meant.
No charge.
But also, you know, because it's not just like a kind of interesting fictional script. We've all been, like, learning together about stuff, and that's been a really nice experience to, like, share, especially when people have been bringing other research that they've done. Or did you know about this? And I've read this article here, and so.
Yeah, it's been a lot of shared research among the cast, which has been great to see. You've all been very proactive as a team in supporting each other. I think that's been great to watch that. Kenny?
Yes, because I think my device is giving me problems. So I want to say this quickly and before I disappear. Right, I think that democracy is a fragile thing. And you know, from the Magna Carta to the suffragettes, and the people getting the full vote, the struggle of people from ethnic minorities being represented, and we're still getting there, and we're learning as a human being, as a human race, yeah. And the people that are still around from Kent State, my message to them is that thank you for highlighting something that is important to all of us. That the best form of governance is democracy, yeah. And I think Biden recently said, yeah, that we're going through a change where democracies have to step up to the plate a little bit to show the world that this is the best way forward for all of us, yeah. Because autocracies come in and fill the void when democracy is not governed with law the right way. And we've got democracy and the law working side by side. We're in a good place. And when the law goes a bit funny, then we're all in a little funny different place. So democracy is important. That's all I say.
I think we got the gist of that, and I think you could apply everything you said to the George Floyd situation, which of course has very much been in the narrative recently. Did everyone answer that question?
Did they?
Scott, was it Scott?
Yeah, no, I just thinking about it as you mentioned it, because it's a very big question to try and come up with something straight away. But it seems to me that nothing really changes in the sense that the media have got a lot to answer for. Governments always cover up. It's been going on since Jesus Christ. Has been going on since the assassination of Julius Caesar. I mean,
yeah,
you know, the media would always. If you look at the 4 kids that were killed at Kent State, they were, what it seems apparent is they were singled out. Geoffrey Miller was given the finger at the front of everyone that was standing there. Maybe he had long hair. Maybe the Guardsman thought. In the press recently, they're going on about the goddamn hippies. 69 was the year before. That was Woodstock. You know, it was in the press a lot more, wasn't it?
Yeah,
The 60s was coming home to people. It was coming home to roost. And they were like,
yeah, and there was a big divide between the people that were in that culture and that were embracing it, and those people that weren't and were still sort of clinging on to the 50s and the late kind of more.
And you can imagine the people in the armed services were at the pressure even more of, well, I'm not going to put up with this. So there's the guy at the front giving the finger. You know, Geoffrey Miller, with all respect, was shot in the mouth. You know, that's a good shot. If that was intentional, that it seems to be intentional if he was mouthing off. Other people that were picked out, it just seems to be we're going to put the hippies in their place, was their opinion. And that's just, I think that was indoctrinated into their minds, the whole of the Vietnam War as well. But the same thing goes on today. Only last year, of course, everything that was happening with coronavirus, 1,000 people dying a day. But at the same time, you had someone like Priti Patel saying, oh, don't look there, look over here. There's immigrants trying to cross the channel. Stop looking at that. Look at this. So the government and the media, they work together sometimes to put us off, not see the truth.
Yeah.
And through doing things like this, we shine a light. And it's up to, it depends how many people watch, and that light continues. But it's a big old Goliath we're fighting. Not saying that we're fighting it, as actors, we're not. The people that went through it, they're the real people that went through it. And I'm so glad they're watching this and they're behind us on this. And I hope it, brings more hope of Kent State to new people that didn't know about it.
Thank you, Clyde. Well, we're going to wrap things up towards the end now. Before I get into final question, just want to remind people that we have another interview this week. We're doing the Schroeder family on Saturday night around the same time, kind of starting sometime between 6:30 and 7. We're pretty vague about the exact start time because you have to remember this is actors we're dealing with, and that they do like to turn up at different times, random to when you say. So, So we're going to be interviewing them Saturday. The actual show, episode 3, is on Sunday night at 8 o'clock UK time, 3 p.m. Eastern Coast, 2 o'clock Chicago, 12 noon West Coast. I think I got all of those right. Yeah, I know. I'm doing Suzette's job. So we've lost Kenny. He did say he was having technical issues. Don't do that on Sunday, Kenny. Don't give us a heart attack now. Suzette does not want to read in the part of Judge Young. Oh, he's back. But just a quick one round the room. Future projects you've got coming up, anyone you want to give a shout out to or thank, or any work you've got some films coming out, anything you want to plug that you've got coming up. Johnny, you must have some things coming out. You've got the show you've just shot.
There's going to be Trending Crimes will be coming out. I'm not sure when, but that will be on Amazon Prime Direct. I play a MI5 agent in that, which it's a fun series. Gets to do some action stuff. And I've got a film coming up as well, which should be shooting early summer. I'm not entirely sure on the details because of COVID and everything. But that's going to be fun as well.
What role are you playing in the movie?
In the movie, I'm playing a bent copper. So that'll be very fun. I'm looking forward to that.
Very relevant, very present. Ash, what about you? You've got your fingers in many pies.
Yes, I got a couple of projects written, just waiting for COVID to disappear a little bit so we can maybe film them, which would be a blessing. Just had a short film that I did a few years back on My5. So if you're in the UK, you can check that out. It's called Falsified. It's inspired by Spain's Stolen Babies drama, which no one really seems to know about. So
is that on YouTube?
My5.
It's on YouTube as well, but on My5, it's just gone up on My5 in the UK. So if you're not in the UK, you can find it on YouTube.
Right. Okay. So, all right. I was going to try and share it quickly.
I'll ping you some links or something. And then, yes, you kind of plugged me earlier, but I've got my podcast. So any actors or filmmaker people who want to listen to casting folks, give some really great insights, check that out. It's the Ash Taba Show. It's on YouTube, Spotify, all the podcasty places.
Fab. Anne, aside from about 10 poster design assignments between now and Christmas for me, Anne designed our poster, by the way, which is, you can see, it's behind me. Fantastic poster with a photograph from Howard Ruffner. I just also want to give a shout out to, thank you, Howard, for giving us permission to use your photograph in there. And what else you got coming up?
It's a good question, Lance.
What roles have you got for me? Yeah.
Nothing exciting to report. I'm going to be watching Ashley's podcast and watching Johnny and his films.
Excellent. Okay.
Thanks.
Anne's future career mainly consists of watching the rest of her. That's not true. Well, we've got a couple of other Outcast projects coming up, and I know Kenny, who's sort of the main producer of one of those, is got a role in mind for Anne already. I've got a role in mind for Anne for the Christmas production. So we're going to be keeping you busy, Anne, and loads of posters coming. Don't worry. So, Kenny, what's coming up in the future for you?
Well, at the moment, well, as I say, we're working on something, me and Toby. Well, it's mainly Toby's putting this together, but it's Henry V production.
Henry's War.
Production. Henry's War. But also, like, with my agent's been fabulous lately, trying to find me parts. And Adele Peters, I love her to bits. She's great, and they're doing their bit to try and get me in the place where I need to be. But also, the beauty of lockdown is that it made me write, and I've wrote a short film and I've wrote a show, and they're ready to go more or less. The short film is called Altered World, and it's a sci-fi thing about some London Cockney old rave promoters. Yeah, they've hit hard times. They live down the south coast, and then basically it's like a Lock, Stock on acid. Right?
I can see you playing a London Cockney, Kenny. Don't ask
Yeah, right.
I feel you'd be good in that role. Last but by no means least, Scott Barrington, who's got to leave soon to go to your wedding, Kenny. Scott, what you got coming up?
I just want to borrow that gel that Kenny's got. I think he's borrowed it from Cameron Diaz in Something About Mary. No, I've got. I might need your help actually, Lance. I'm halfway through a book that I might need to self-publish because no sane publisher would probably print. About 20 years ago, I wrote a film, and then we shot it about 15 years ago, and we're still editing it now. The book's called How to Make a Film in 20 Years or Your Money Back Guaranteed. Yeah, I thought it might be like a how-to not to on making feature films. Might be interesting. So I'm trying to finish that in lockdown. It's been good to write that. Thank you.
Lance, there's one other thing that I'm doing, right? I want to plug, right? Yeah. It's a show called the London Cockney Experience, right?
London Cockney Experience.
Yeah, right. I found the venue and everything else, right? And it's basically a show for tourists to come to London, and they get all
when they're allowed to come to London again. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm saying. It'll open up again, won't it?
Yeah.
It'll happen. Yeah, and then you can get to see me.
Nice.
Brilliant.
I'll be there, Kenny.
Brilliant.
Let's go, Susan.
So we do like to keep these interviews with a breath of levity at all times, but that's not to detract or misrepresent from the fact that as a company, as a production company, as the Outcast, we take this production very seriously. I say this on every interview. Our rehearsals are quite intense. Our rehearsals are quite serious. There's not a lot of time for joking around. In fact, actually, the online nature of it solidifies that in a way. It makes it all about the work because we don't have time to go down to the pub and have a laugh afterwards. There isn't that space. It's all about rehearsing and getting the characters and doing the lines and the interaction and and trying to correct the technicals like Kenny's camera. But it's a show we take very seriously. It's not something we undertook lightly. We're acutely aware of the responsibility of the story, and it's been great, the support that we've had since we've started airing the episodes, but it's also been sobering and a useful reminder to hear feedback of any kind. And you know, we're going to continue in that same vein of professionalism. We might only be a small company with a weenie budget, but we all take it very seriously, and the actors are extremely committed to their parts. And on behalf of myself, Suzette, Anne, who I should also mention does behind the scenes stuff as well, Well, you didn't even mention she's one of the producers on the show. You can tell she's a producer. She's got long hair. She's got glasses. She has all the requirements.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Suze, you need to get your glasses on. You can't be a proper producer until you've got your glasses. There you go.
I'm here.
But yeah, and to the actors, thank you for, again, giving up your time for free and coming to talking to us. I hope it's useful for people watching, whether you're in the industry, whether you're interested in Kent State, or whether you just happen to bypass and say, what's that's running live? So we'll be back on Saturday with another interview around the same time, slightly smaller number of actors, probably won't last as long. And then we'll be back on Sunday at 8 o'clock with most of our lovely cast. Not everybody's in every episode. For episode 3, Billy, and it's going to be quite an interesting episode, slightly shorter than the last 2, but very powerful. And then 2 more to go. Don't forget, the last episode drops on May 4th itself in the evening UK time, but it will be in the afternoon. And episode 4 is on Sunday just before that. So thanks very much, guys. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you, those people, for watching. Subscribe to the channel, share our content, do invite people to come and see the show, and we'll see you all again real soon.